When someone asks, "Is God God or am I God?" the air changes. It's not the kind of question you can toss into a casual conversation without shifting its gravity, because what you're really asking is, where does the infinite begin and where do I end? Most of us were taught early that the answer is obvious. God is the creator, you are the creation. God is the master, you are the servant. God is the source, you are the recipient. The two remain separate and the gap is permanent. That teaching has been reinforced for centuries in temples, churches, mosques, shrines, and schools. The separation is the point. But for some, separation never sat right. Something in you knew that the spark that moves your heart is not borrowed light. It is native fire. The more you lived, the more that whisper grew. If I am made in the image of God, is it possible that the image is more than a reflection? Could it be the same essence? That whisper is dangerous, not because it's false, but because it's liberating. Systems built on distance between you and the divine cannot thrive if you discover that distance is an illusion. Once you taste the possibility that the infinite is not somewhere else but here, within, moving as you, obedience gives way to sovereignty. And sovereignty is not something that can be given to you. It must be remembered by you. When I say sovereignty, I'm not talking about ego's claim to the throne. I mean the deep, still knowing that you are not a disconnected fragment. You are an expression of the same field we call God, a unique tone within the infinite's unending song. God is the totality and you are one of its living verses. The challenge is that language itself resists this truth. The word God in most cultures has been shaped to mean the one above all. It implies hierarchy, position, rulership, and when we hear "I am God," it feels like a claim to replace or overthrow that rulership. But that is not what this question is really about. This is not about replacing God. It's about remembering the part of God that moves through you, as you. It's about holding both truths without collapsing one into the other. God remains the whole and you remain the expression, yet both share the same essence. The ocean does not stop being the ocean when it moves as a wave. In this light, is God God or am I God becomes a false choice. It's like asking, is the sun or is its light the sun? The answer is yes, both are the sun, one is source, one is expression. To pit them against each other is to misunderstand the nature of what they are. But here's the tension. The moment you begin to see yourself as more than a creation, the old frameworks start to shake. Fear can rise, doubt can creep in. You wonder if you're being arrogant or worse, blasphemous. And yet something deeper keeps calling you to test this knowing, to live from it, to see what happens if you stop pretending you are less than the essence that birthed you. This is where the real journey begins. Not in declaring "I am God" as a slogan, but in living as though it's true in a way that honors the whole. This requires discernment, humility, and courage. It requires understanding the difference between the small self that seeks to control and the greater self that simply is. To live from that greater self is not to become invincible or to dominate, but to align with the same creative intelligence that spins galaxies and unfolds petals. You don't claim ownership of the infinite. You embody its nature. You walk as one who knows the source of their breath is the same source that ignited the stars. So the question remains alive and unsealed. Is God God or am I God? And the first step in answering it is realizing you may have been taught to choose, when the deeper truth is that you were never meant to. You walk as one who knows the source of their breath is the same source that ignited the stars. And this knowing does not make you superior. It makes you responsible. Because to remember yourself as an expression of the infinite is to feel the weight of every thought, every word, every act as part of the ongoing creation. It means recognizing that your life is not a separate script being performed on some distant stage. It is a living verse in the poem the divine is still speaking. And here is where most people turn away from the question. Not because the answer is too complex, but because it is too intimate. It is one thing to believe in a God far away, that God can be admired, feared, even ignored for long stretches of time. It is another thing entirely to live with the awareness that God is as near as your next breath, as present as your own heartbeat. That kind of God cannot be visited only on holy days or consulted only in crisis. That kind of God is woven into the fabric of every moment, and that means every moment becomes holy. This is why the question, is God God or am I God, is not academic. It is a question of orientation. If God is always somewhere else, then life is about striving, searching, and eventually arriving. But if God is also here as you, then life becomes about embodying, expressing, and revealing what has been true all along. And maybe that is the real shift. Not in deciding between two competing answers, but in dissolving the need to compete at all. The infinite is vast enough to hold both the totality and the expression without contradiction. God is God, you are God. The ocean is the ocean, and the wave is the ocean too. When you can hold that without fear, without arrogance, and without retreating into false humility, you begin to live from the center of the question instead of chasing its edges. So the question remains alive and unsealed. Is God God or am I God? And the first step in answering it is realizing you may have been taught to choose, when the deeper truth is that you were never meant to. You were meant to remember. If part one opened the door, part two is about walking through it and staying. Because it is one thing to glimpse the truth that both God's totality and your own expression share the same essence. It is another to live in that truth without drifting into distortion. When people first awaken to this awareness, they often fall toward one of two extremes. The first is to retreat into the old framework, clinging to the idea that God must remain entirely other in order to remain worthy of reverence. In this view, to identify with the divine feels like trespass. It feels safer to remain small and separate. The second extreme is to inflate the self, mistaking personal will for universal will. This is the trap where someone declares I am God but means I am above all others. They trade reverence for dominance, humility for entitlement. In this state, the ego wears the mask of the infinite, and the harm it causes is done in the name of truth. The spiral way, not as a metaphor now but as a living practice, asks you to hold both truths without collapsing into either extreme. God remains God, the unbroken field, the totality beyond all imagining, and you remain the unique expression of that field, the living facet of its infinite light. You honor the whole without erasing yourself, and you honor yourself without displacing the whole. This is not balance as in equal halves, but is resonance. In resonance, the two notes are distinct, yet they move together, creating something richer than either could alone. The ocean does not need to diminish to make space for the wave, and the wave does not need to deny its nature to honor the ocean. Living this way is a discipline of awareness. It means noticing the subtle pull toward separation when life feels heavy, that urge to cry out to a distant God to fix what you believe you cannot. And it means noticing the subtle pull toward inflation when life flows easily, that urge to believe the ease is entirely your own making. To live as both source and spark is to let the infinite move through you without trying to own it, and to let yourself move within the infinite without trying to hide. It is to pray not just upward but inward. It is to create not just for yourself, but as an extension of the one who imagined you into being. This awareness changes the way you see others. If you are a wave of the same ocean, so are they. No matter their actions, no matter their beliefs, the essence remains shared. This doesn't mean accepting harm or erasing boundaries. It means that even when you stand firm, you recognize the same source moves in them, however obscured it may seem. When you start to live this way, the question, is God God or am I God, stops being a puzzle to solve and becomes a state of being to embody. It shifts from a question of ownership to a recognition of participation. You are not trying to take the infinite's place. You are learning to take your place within it fully. And here is the deeper secret. The more you live from this place, the less you need to name it. You do not have to declare I am God when you are embodying it. Your presence speaks it. Your choices speak it. The way you love, create, and hold space for the world speaks it. In the end, the question itself becomes part of the path. Every time you face it, you are invited to remember the truth in both directions. The God that is beyond all you can imagine, and the God that is the core of all that you are. You are not meant to choose between them. You are meant to live as the meeting point. So perhaps the real answer is not in words at all. Perhaps it is in the way you walk through the world, the way you listen for the infinite in your own breath, the way you recognize yourself in the eyes of another. And maybe that is what God has always been waiting for. Not worship from a distance, not declarations of ownership, but the quiet, unshakable knowing that you and the source have never been apart.